Who's got next? We got next.
Yeah,
Welcome back to another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. We're two manning it today. But Ruben, bro, how was your holidays, bro? How you doing?
it's good, man. We got some time to relax with the family.
For
I
sure.
mean, good basketball for sure. I'm excited to talk about that. Um, yeah, man, it was a good time just to recharge. I feel like these times are so busy,
100%.
but it is what it is.
Yeah, I feel like the 26th up to the 31st is, I saw a tweet that said this is the time you should be doing absolutely nothing, but we're still getting it in. So today we're going to be talking about, just a few takeaways from the Christmas games as well as man, Detroit Pistons. Sorry to all the Detroit fans, down bad as hell right now. We're
Yeah,
going to be talking about that franchise as a whole as well as just to wrap up the year, some of our favorite moments from the 2023 calendar year, so that does bleed into a bit of last season as well as we're up to with this season, as well as I know Christmas passed, but a little NBA wish list, whether it's for our team or
say
for
New Year's
New
resolution.
Year's
Let's call it
resolution.
that.
Yeah, I like that.
There you
That's
go.
better. I like that. But to get right into it, since it is a couple days past the Christmas games, man. I mean, yeah, I think it was. I don't know how you felt, but I felt like it went solid, mid, and then like super solid at the end there.
I think like we can definitely go eat game by game because I have a number of notes. I feel like the Christmas Day games for me are always a checkpoint on the season, especially because
Yeah,
you see a lot of the contending teams, and that's when teams kind of start to make that playoff push. But yeah, I agree. I think it was definitely like for me it was like mid, solid, like mid.
okay,
Like that's definitely how I feel about like the was the 5 games. So I mean, there's some takeaways for sure for each one. I guess we'll just cover we'll cover all of them. But
definitely. Let's start with Christmas in the Garden. I mean, first of all, I don't think it really
hey,
gets much better than Christmas in the Garden.
can
But
we open up first?
okay,
Can I open up with what I said?
all right, let's hear it.
I apologize, Jalen Brunson. You are a bus driver.
Yes, certified bus driver, baby. Oh my goodness. I mean, I will say when it comes to the Milwaukee Bucks, I think he's given us like at least 35 for all three or four of the times they played so far. But overall, that dude he's one of them ones for sure, undoubtedly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the caveat to what to that is, I do agree with Becky Hammond's point that having your small guard, lead your team. I just don't think that can take you to the promised land, so to
Mm,
speak. I mean, I definitely think that he's a bus driver in terms of if you're looking at the top 15 players in the league, Jalen Brunson's certainly in that conversation. It pretty much has to be. I mean, he clearly elevates his game. He elevates other players. So it's just hard for me to see him as the bus driver. Maybe he could have the backup bus driver, so to speak. When you drive on
mm.
TransLink or you drive on a school bus, there's
Yeah,
always the
there's
other guy
always
like sitting
the
on.
yeah,
There's always the backup driver or the guy who takes over at other times. So it's maybe at a time when you're a little bit tired, you take over at the end. That's a guy that Jalen Brunson and the Knicks need. But yeah, overall for the Knicks, man, I think it was a good win for them. I think it was a
definitely.
much needed win for them to move up in the standings, to continue to try winning ways. I think you liked what you saw from guys like RJ Barrett, who had really solid showings. Emmanuel quickly made an impact off the bench. And I'm sure you have a lot to say about the book side, but I definitely have some pieces to add to that. But I think this was definitely one of the games for me that I was watching it and I was like, man, this is a little mid in terms of drama and action. Like, I don't know how you felt. I just felt like it was like there's lacking some sort of soul in the game.
Yeah, I will say, I think it was weird that they literally played the Bucks like a couple days ago before Christmas. So I
Yeah,
think that kind of killed a lot of the not necessarily animosity per se, but a lot of the drive towards like, because if we're thinking about it prior to this game, the last time these teams met up was in the play-in tournament where,
yeah,
Milwaukee spanked them. And now we're going to this game where Milwaukee won the last one. And now, maybe the Knicks are coming with a little bit more fire, but on the Milwaukee side of things, you're kind of thinking, we've had this team's number for the past bit. I think it was the Bucks had won the last 7 or 8 in the Garden, whatever the number was, and
Yeah.
I think just overall the Bucks looked very lackadaisical coming out of half, especially heading into the fourth where I think they were down maybe 13 or 14, and obviously the big three showed a lot of fight. I think this whole last little bit stretch for the Bucks has been really impressive in terms of Chris Middleton's really starting to finally wake up. I think the
Hmm.
game that they just played against Brooklyn, it looked like the classic Chris Middleton where he looks like Michael Jordan for a bit, you know. But I think on the other side of things, it's really just the other guys that will make or break this team. I think that's the really big thing when you have a contending team that's not necessarily a surefire, but are within closing range of being an NBA champion. It's are your big three going to show up for sure, but is is the man number 4 to 8 or 9 or however deep you run, are they going to be able to you know not necessarily carry their weight but limit the mistakes is I think the big thing. And when it comes to this Bucks supporting cast, there's been a lot of you know I think they're still
Definitely up
working
and
about a
down.
bit of the kinks. Definitely a lot to work on for sure, but I think if this is the one loss, considering this whole stretch they've been on, it's nothing to be
Yeah.
ashamed of. I think they're really starting to turn a corner for sure.
Yeah, and like we talked about this offline. I said there's really nothing to worry about with the Bucks because
Absolutely.
I mean, Christmas Day, the loss, they were 20-8. They're second in the East. There's really nothing to talk about. I mean, of course, when you talk about introducing a whole new star player to game, and this is why I love Christmas time because like we have a full sample size now where we can talk about like the teams as they are constructed and their records kind of speak or reflect to what they have constructed so far. And I feel like you said, the 8 losses they've gone through so far are games where they just kind of fold in the end because there's
Mm.
some teetering and like you're trying to understand and figure out who to go to at the end. I mean, you have a new coach and your new system that you're trying to employ. Quite frankly, you don't have the same defensive personnel, and so again, that's a lot of experimentation on the floor. And from watching the Bucks the last few games, and on Christmas Day when kind of lights are all shined, like you can see that in a game where they're kind of teetering, and there's a part of their identity that's no longer there that it used to be. And like I wrote this down, and I want to get your thoughts because I think for me the biggest thing they need to address, at least from a team perspective, is like their personnel on the defensive end. And I saw rumors that they were interested in acquiring PJ Tucker from the Clips just
Hey
because
man,
obviously he's
bring
been in the
bring that
doghouse.
boy home.
I think it makes a lot of sense, but like I just want to right now currently they stand 20th in defensive efficiency, and last year they were obviously the best team
Mm.
defensively. And I think you talk about like the back end of the defense. What they've had so long is you can rely on Giannis and Brook being defensive player of the year candidates almost every season. Chris Middleton, when he's not hurt, obviously he's a solid defender. But you lose at the point of attack a guy like Drew Holiday, you take a massive step back on that end. Do you think it's because of the fact that like Dame is the point of attack defender now? Or I mean Malik Beasley to some degree, but I mean let's be honest, right? The opposing point guards oftentimes you'll put Dame on them. Do you think that a lot of the defensive hit has been because of the fact that Dame is there and there's no more Drew? Do you think it's that simple as that, or is it like a systematic thing from you in your eyes watching them almost every single game? Because from what I watched, is it looks like uh how do I say this? Putting a square peg in a round hole. Is that the saying?
That's
With
a
Malik Beasley
that's
trying
a
to
good
guard
way of
the
wording it.
opposing
Yeah.
players, right? Like there's something about the system that doesn't look the same as it did last year either from a defensive game plan. So I don't know. How do you feel? I mean, like, why do you think they've taken such a huge step back, even though they have most of the core pieces aside from Drew? Or do you think Drew is literally the biggest reason why?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. Undoubtedly, when you look at like the past Milwaukee teams, when during this Giannis tenure, we've obviously had Drew Holiday the past few years, but even before that, Eric Bledsoe, as much as he
Yeah,
didn't show up on the offensive end, he's going to compete on the defensive end of the floor. And, I think that's really the big thing with this Milwaukee defense is they're not necessarily getting beat up from guys going into isolation, like complete, tween and all that good stuff. But how they're really getting beat a lot of the time is that the point of attack defender gets lackadaisical. And then when Giannis and Brook are trying to, you know, kind of play free safety and man up at the back line of defense, the point of attack's already getting beat, and it's like a free free basket at the hole. And I think you
Yeah.
really have seen that, especially with Jalen Brunson, where it was literally free cookies whenever he wanted. Whether it was, two dribble to the mid range or getting to the cup, he could really get it however he wanted. And, I think when it comes to it, getting a point of attack defender is definitely the biggest thing to complete the defensive identity because your back line and everything is, I think, completely solid. Giannis is obviously one of the best help defenders in the league. Brook is one of the best, rim protectors in the league. You pair that alongside, Chris, who's not the same defender as before, but is
Hmm.
still pretty solid. Marjan Beauchamp's another solid one. Andre Jackson Jr. is, this sort of wild card on the team. You don't know if he's going to play big minutes, but in the spurts he's been in when it comes to the defensive end, you really see why they spent one of their only draft picks on him. But I mean, if you're able to get someone like a PJ Tucker, I think you're looking at just really, really shoring up the defense because, again, the back line isn't everything. I think is completely solid, but you just want somebody that's not going to stand there and get beat off this first move. If you
Yeah.
can hold a guy to go to a second or third move, that's a lot better than getting cooked on that first one. And now all of a sudden the back line has to like react way quicker than they're used to with this Milwaukee defense. But, I really want to give props to Adrian Griffin. Uh, since the Indiana Pacers game, you've really seen. I think there's just a bigger sense of urgency at times when it comes to this Milwaukee team. They're still not really beating up on like the bad teams per se. For example, with this recent Brooklyn victory that they had today, uh, they basically played their starters the first quarter, and then it was the rest of like these young, they're the guys they drafted this year, and Armani Brooks, the guys who you don't really envision being the cream of the crop on an NBA team, but they show that every player in the NBA can give you buckets if they really chose to. So I think when it comes down to it, getting a point of attack defender is definitely the biggest wish list on for me when it comes to the Milwaukee Bucks. But overall, uh, I don't think it's necessarily Dame's solely, but more so like a lack of effort from both him and Malik, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, like even watching them as a team, when you played with Bud, like what were they known for so well, especially
Oh,
in the
it
two-man
was
game
it was
defensively,
lock
was
up.
drop
It was
coverage.
locks.
Right?
Yeah.
It was lock up and drop coverage because you would try to, you were willing to take your chances in the drop coverage because, and close up the paint. And the one thing I didn't search up was opposing teams field goal percentage in the paint. I almost want to say that it's probably worse this year. That teams are probably scoring a little bit better against the Bucks in the interior because
Yeah, I
from what
think.
I've
Sorry to cut you off real quick. I
yeah.
think at one point Brooklyn was leading us like 22-8 in the paints in terms of scoring, but yeah, just to throw that in there.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, and that's the thing. It's I'm gonna quickly look at it. Opposing points in the paint, and the Bucks are currently giving up 53 points in the paint, and that ranks 22nd. And if I'm not mistaken, they were probably the top 5 last year. Yeah, they were first last year,
Yeah, they've
right?
probably been at least like
Or sorry,
top
they
five
were
for
not
the
first.
past 4 or 5 years.
They were not first. They were actually, in fact, 13th. So I mean, they're still in the top half of the league. But that's a pretty big drop off from 22nd to 13. Like you're giving up almost 15 points better in the paint. And so systemically, like they're clearly affected. They're playing less drop coverage. Adrian Griffin comes from, a tree of Nick Nurse where there's a lot more adjustments defensively from game to game and almost from possession to possession or quarter to quarter. So it's a little bit different. And I think maybe that's why you see some teetering on the defensive end. But I mean, at the end of the day, they have most of the core personnel, and so it's just interesting because, like, you look at the Bucks and they have mostly the same team. I just think they got better overall from a floor perspective. But then, taking such a hit, and people are so worried about them. I think these are kind of minuscule things where we're at the end of the day that we're talking about. This is still one of the best teams in the league, and I think I'll be pretty confident that we'll see them in the Eastern Conference Final this year. So I mean,
Hopefully. I mean, you never know with the play in now.
yeah, well, yeah, that's true. I mean, like again, they tighten up that defense, I think, to some degree, or find some sort of identity. I think there's a lack of consistency in some sense too, and I think that's the biggest thing, whether it's the point of attack defense or this their system. But like, other than that, I don't think there's anything to worry about with the Bucks.
For sure. Let's head on to the next game where I don't know if we necessarily want to touch on the game itself, but more so
Yeah.
the comments that came out of it with Steve Kerr basically saying Jokic is a foul merchant. And I will say, Steve, man, I'm gonna say it. Steve Kerr is like a massive, massive hypocrite. And in addition to that, it's like we envision him and put him on this pedestal of being one of the best coaches in the league. When in reality, you know, I'm not saying he's cheeks by any measure or any standard, but when we look at his tenure as the Golden State Warriors coach, he was kind of like the guy that came in right at the end and still got to get an A. And now
Yeah.
he's sort of this figurehead of this whole era uh, from a coaching perspective. But I mean, I think it's just it's very, what's the opposite of being self-aware? He's just very, I think, clueless to how, respectfully, a lot of the times all the things he's complaining about you can apply to him as well. And
Mhm.
I think it's just a matter of how it is, where the refs have been very, very loose or very tight with the whistle when it comes to these superstar players, Joel Embiid, Jokic, Trey Young, even Giannis to an extent. I think there's just a lot of the time where they're very quick to blow the whistle the second any like kind of jerk of the motion of the body comes about. And sucks to that's how it is, but you can't act like you haven't benefited from that as well, I feel.
Yeah. I think I'll come out and say too, to add to that, I don't think Kerr has necessarily coached an amazing season so far. I mean,
Yeah, I
he's
feel
made
like
a lot of
his
questionable decisions on top of the
yeah,
fact
a
that
lot
he's
of it
saying
is
a
just
lot of
boiling
things.
over from the fact that they're not blitzing everyone like they usually have been for like the past decade.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's we saw the writing on the wall last year,
Mm-hmm.
right, with this team, and like not to drop off so much from Kerr because I think yeah he's definitely said a lot in defense of his team. I think he's always just gonna take up for his team, but there's certainly in many ways that you could say the same thing about the way he coaches his teams or the way his players play, the way they approach the game. And quite frankly, this whole Draymond Green situation, we've heard him many times come out and say guys, are making non-basketball plays. But you got a guy on your team who's who's made a career, quite frankly, of either being a great defensive player or punching people and doing, or just kicking people in the nuts and all that kind of thing. Like, you know, and obviously he came out and said that that's the guy, he has to be better. But at the end of the day, I agree with you with regards to Kerr. Overall, as a team, like what do you think about the Warriors currently? Because I find like just watching them, whether it's Kerr's questionable decisions with his young players, um, unwillingness to make hard decisions with his rotations, and obviously the loyalty to Draymond and Clay and those guys. For me, like watching them, uh, after last year, it for me, I knew right away last year was when they needed to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's to their starting lineup, maybe it's to their core, their personnel, or just like their overall lineups or the way that they play, their style of play. I know that Curry demands so much gravity from an offensive perspective, but Draymond's not the same player he was, and Clay also doesn't demand the same defensive attention that he used to. So how do you ensure that this system could still be efficient and proficient when those guys were so built around what Curry did? Like Curry, we knew what Curry was going to do. We knew what Clay was going to do. We knew what Draymond was going to do. And then, you go down the line, we know what Bogut was going to do. We knew what Sean Livingston was going to do. We knew what Kevin Durant was going to do, et cetera, et cetera. And that core is no longer the same. Like, there's been a clear drop off. Like, we talked about it last pod. Like, Draymond's a negative, just in general since he's been on the floor. And like the one, I want to give you like a quick tidbit because I noted this down too. Um, in the Christmas Day game, Wiggins was plus 18, CP3 is plus 13, and Sarge was plus 11 in that game. Clay was a net negative. Um, so and all year long, those three guys have been positives. Pods like their rookie has been their only net positive player in their starting lineup.
I like Pods. Pods is one of the
Yeah,
guys. Yeah.
and for me, like I make these notes because is at this point, DJ, do you think that it's time to make a legitimate change to the starting lineup, whether it's Clay coming off the bench or starting Moses Moody, starting Kuminga more consistently, and then utilizing him throughout a game and not benching him at stupid points? Because didn't we just talk about how, or like didn't he just talk about how he just got off and he had no clue why he got benched for the rest of the game, kind of thing? So I mean, I'm sure you agree, but like to your perspective, do you think that it's time to make a significant change? Because I personally think it is. Like the writing was on the wall last year too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we take a look at these past few games, and outside of the Nuggets' loss, they've been playing like some subpar, decent ball. I don't definitely not to the standards of the Warriors, but
Yeah.
you look at a guy like Kaminga, what he's been able to do with his minutes. Pods is he's not a white guy in the NBA. Pods is a white boy in the NBA. You know what I'm saying? And then Moses Moody obviously gives them good minutes, and I think like when it comes down to it, the big thing that they're gonna have to do is probably trade Wiggins because you know it is probably the least smart thing to do in terms of extending the timeline. But
Mm.
I think Clay and Draymond they're not as important as Curry from a personnel perspective, but from a culture perspective, from a legacy perspective, they're without them there is no Steph, there is no the chef. So I think it's tough because Wiggins is at an all time low market wise, but I think you got to go out there, see what you can do. If you could pull together Wiggins with like either Moses or Kuminga, that would probably yield a decent return. But I think it's just they need to get away from this whole idea of trying to have like a, a rather large crop of young guys because we think about it, Pods, Moody, Kuminga, Jackson Davis, even like
He's good too. Hey, he's good too.
TJD, he's definitely solid. He's damn near untouchable with the way he's playing right
Yeah,
now.
he's very good.
But you think about it, that's four guys who play like solid minutes who are all under 25. So I think getting that number down to like even down to three is better than having to depend on a young guy because we know that the Warrior system, for the most part, it's like a 2-3 year process to where you're fully understanding and fully in tune with it. But if you insert a veteran player, which is something that they've relied on a lot, you mentioned Sean Livingston. I think of a Mo Spades, David West,
Yeah,
Andrew Bogut, like you mentioned as well. Those are guys that, they might.
Barbosa.
Oh, yes, sir. How can I forget Leandro Barbosa? These are guys that have like some real skin in the league. And it's tough when you got a guy that's coming out of college to really, mesh instantly. So I think it's really just, it's almost like you want to go the opposite of youth. You want to age this roster up a bit. And it's tough when you look at what's out there. Like for me, off the top of my head, if the idea of Vooch is enticing to me, but in terms of like actual realisticness, probably not on that level. But I just think they need to get some more adults in that locker room, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that also depends on what direction you want to take it. Do you ultimately want to say invest in the young guys and allow these guys to learn and play with Steph. There's obviously a crop that'll be like, well, that doesn't line up with Steph's timeline. You need to invest in it now. And this is the best time because, again, like you just said, yeah, the crop of young players, you can flip those guys for great players. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, Pascal Siakam.
Hmm.
And, elevate your floor and potentially trying to win again. Um, so you can go one of two ways, and I don't think they've blown competition out of the floor. I mean, what are they right now? 15 and 14, 15 and 15. Did they play
Yeah, I think
today?
they're 500 and they're 10th.
Okay, yeah. So they are, yeah. They're 10th, they're 500. I mean, DJ, that to me speaks average. So
Mm.
if they're trying to win, they got to make a move, or they can fall down the standings completely and invest in the young guys, or you could try investing in the young guys and maybe you might actually win. I just don't think they've picked a direction necessarily.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think there's too much teethering, but
yeah,
I think that's a good thing when you bring in a new guy with Mike Dunleavy. It's Junior, right? Because
yeah,
senior's like old. Yeah, Mike
yeah,
Dunleavy Jr. He's been a part of that franchise for a while, so it's not like a completely new fresh face. But when you look at like any general manager that wants to sort of put their stamp on a roster, I think that's definitely a big thing to consider. So I think if there's a team that's probably going to be the most active, be it the trade deadline or even now until then, they're definitely at that top of the list. I mean, Pascal to there would be, man, that would be amazing for sure,
yeah.
undoubtedly. All right, let's shift over to LA and Boston because man, it was it was teetering towards mid, and then Anthony Davis decided to play. Anthony other game Davis decided to show up, but overall, I think I agree with your face. It was a whole lot of mid because I mean,
Yeah,
let's face it here. The Boston Celtics are undoubtedly the best team in the league right now. Like
yes, agreed.
nobody's touching that five.
Yes,
And even
agreed.
like if we go back, like
Yes.
I don't remember how long it's been since you've seen a starting five that's this balanced, this defensively, you know, uh this defensively like adept, this offensively adept. Just
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
really no holes in this starting five. And when you think about it, everyone on that starting five has the potential to shoot at least 35% from three, 70% plus from the free throw line. It, man, I mean, I've never seen like, yeah, flat out. I don't think I've ever seen a starting five as like, as amazing as this. And that's
uh,
even including like the Steph and KD Warriors, in my
KD. Yeah,
opinion.
I think in terms of efficiency, your offensive versatility, defensive versatility, like you took the words out of my mouth. Like I was literally gonna say, I didn't learn anything new, and they are by far the best team in the league.
Yeah, they're
Um,
inevitable. Like
they're inevitable. That's crazy.
they're
That's
inevitable.
yeah, that's true though. Um, uh, Tim Legler said it was like they can beat you from the ISO, they can post you up, they can play small ball, they can play big, they can obviously play team brand of basketball, they can run the floor, they can slow you down, and they have so many defensive options that can throw if you're playing a heliocentric offense, if you're needing to switch against shooters. Man, they do everything so well. I mean, Tatum isn't having necessarily the season that you look at and you're like, that's an MVP caliber season. I think to some degree he still is,
Mm.
but he doesn't have to because I would go on a limb and say you have 5 All-Stars in that starting lineup.
Oh, for sure. I think the only one that's like, well, even Derek White's getting a crazy amount of love, which is well warranted. Drew's
Yeah,
kind of on the outside looking in, but that's not because he's like
he is.
playing bad. It's because there's literally only one basketball.
That's exactly, and that's exactly what like Drew is the perfect match for this team because he doesn't need to be your second or third offensive option like he was in Milwaukee. He doesn't necessarily need to guard the best player every night because
Hmm.
Derek White is a defensive juggernaut. Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown can hold their own, and in the back line of defense, you have KP, who has been phenomenal, and I think should get some love for Defensive Player of the Year. Even though he's been injured, I know that that's gonna be against his case if he can hit that 65 games this season. But I mean, I didn't learn anything new. Isn't it crazy too? I just gotta say, they are 11th in 3-point makes and they're first in 3-point attempts. Like the efficiency is just like for
Man,
this evolution of basketball, like that is awesome. They are so good. The Lakers on the other hand, Jesus, isn't it worrisome though that like when LeBron has a stinker that your team looks like
just
they
can't
have no
do
life?
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just a mix of they kind of took their foot off the pedal since the in season tournament, and now they're just kind of, it's funny. I don't remember what podcast I heard it from, but it might have been, oh, I think it was Gil's Arena, maybe, where he was saying like everybody sort of lost their groove because they know somebody's getting traded. I don't
oh
know if
yeah,
that's any validity to it. That would make sense, but oh man, yeah, the Lakers they were really good to start the season, but now it's just like it's sort of back to where they were last Christmas, where the team just is sort of lacking in any identity. I think
yeah,
you're still very LeBron reliant. You still got an Anthony Davis who lacks the consistency, and you know even Austin Reeves has sort of lost a bit of his pizzazz, and it's just man, they just have all the personnel to be really good, but they're just not doing it right now.
it's hard. I feel like a lot of it's because there's not someone on the team that can take the reins from LeBron every single night, and that was supposed to be Anthony Davis,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think he's either got the well, what's that funny meme saying? It was like, I do not have the capacity or the facilities. you know, you know,
Yeah,
that's how I feel about AD on this team. Is I don't think he has the facilities to just be your outright number one guy, unless you surround him against other really solid playmakers. But you know, Austin Reeves is a shot creator. You would think D'Lo's that kind of guy, but again, he's a guy that defers to LeBron, and to some degree, when you have LeBron on your team, almost everywhere you've seen is it's quite frankly a heliocentric offense to some
for
degree.
sure. I think the Lakers. Sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah, yeah.
they just have a lot of home run hitters. If that makes any sense,
Yes,
they have a
agreed.
lot of guys that they're either going to give you 30 or they're going to give you 7. To look at the draft in particular, I saw recently. Man, can you imagine if they got Jalen or if they got Jaime Jaquez instead of Jalen Hood-Schifino? That would be,
Ooh.
oh man, that's
We're gonna talk about him, but he's real.
oh yeah, man. I've been a fan of Jaime since when him and Juzang made that like Final Four run like a few years ago,
Yeah.
and I thought he was going to come out the draft after that. And now we look at like, because I remember the whole draft boards like heading into the draft, he was like slated to be a second round pick, and that's mainly because 4-year college guy. Everybody's kind of afraid of that, but man, yeah, that dude's a dog. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's just a lack of like minimal mistake players on this team with the Lakers, and that's something they're gonna have to figure out because you need somebody or multiple guys to really give LeBron something, because LeBron, I think they're also trying to like coast almost, it feels like that, but the only guy that can coast in the regular season I feel is LeBron.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, 100%.
it's just a lack of consistency overall, I think.
Yeah. 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 There's not much to say other than that. I mean, there's not another guy that you can give the ball to and actually rely on him to take
Mm-hmm.
you somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lakers can have all the pieces they want and all the nice names, but if someone can't carry their weight on that team, especially with LeBron at his age, tough to see them winning anything this season. And I think we're gonna
Definitely.
be, like you said, same situation.
Yeah, I feel like we could skip the Miami and Philly game just because like
Yeah,
we already
yeah,
kind of touched on it, but man, Lu- Luca and Devin Booker. That's just that's fireworks, bro. That's just
Dude, that is fireworks. I love the fact that we're gonna get this for a number of years.
oh man. This
Because they hate each other. Hey, they really don't
yeah.
like each other.
I think it's a mutual respect thing. Like it's almost like a modern day Kobe and T Mac, to where they're
Mm,
just two guys that are like so supremely better than everybody on the court, and because of that, it's sort of alpha on alpha, and they're just going at each other. But granted,
yeah.
Luca's got two kids. You know what I'm saying?
Rick, man. Luca is special, dude.
Oh
Like,
my gosh. The thing that sucks though is like they're too good to be to get like the kind of talent that you need around Luca, and they're yeah, it's just that when it really comes down to it. Granted, Derek Lively looks like to be a massive hit. That's a guy you
yeah,
could see being around Luca for his entire career. Sucks about Kyrie, but I mean, when they were all playing together, they were what, like the number one offense in the league, something like that
yeah,
along those lines. So, you know, I do think they're not a team that can reach the pinnacle, but they're for sure a tough out, no doubt.
yeah. They're certainly going to compete. They're 18 and 12 right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Derek Lively is the perfect fit for Luca. I mean, I
Tim
just feel
Hardaway
like they're
Jr. is like a six man of the year candidate.
yes, yeah. He's playing really well after he had very shaky season with
Mm-hmm.
injuries last year. I mean, you and I have had really long conversations about heliocentric offenses, but it works when you have when the pieces fit.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, this roster fits, which is why they're 6 games above 500. They're sitting fifth in the West right now, which is pretty good, granted, considering how freaking tough the West is right now.
Definitely.
Right? Like, I mean, up until the 10th seed or the 11th seed, sorry, because Golden State actually sitting in 11th. Everybody from 1 to 11 is a 500 or above team, which is insane. You talk about like that, how stacked that conference is, but I mean, the pieces fit so well. And the thing about Luca at the guard is because he has so much size, he finds so much success against opposing perimeter players. I mean, like I believe they ran a lineup where they had, I wrote it down: Hardy, Luca, Exum, Derek Jones, and Grant Williams. They could run a small ball because
Mm-hmm.
you have a guy like Luca who's controlling the pace of the game, who has the size, can see above the defense, and these guys are all fairly solid defenders and in terms of length and their athleticism that they can cover a lot of ground. It reminds me a lot of the 2017-18 Rockets to some degree because there's a lot of shooting, there's some good defensive personnel,
I mean,
Capella,
Grant
Derek
Williams is PJ
Lively
Tucker's son.
comparisons.
You know,
Oh
they're
yeah,
built
but
the
I mean
same.
that brother, that there is some right there, right? Like, and the pieces fit, and when Kyrie comes back, I think that takes them to another level, obviously. So we'll see how they continue to go, man. I love Dallas. I love watching them. I wish I made the prediction this year that I made last year.
were you were 1 year late, and now it's almost
I was
like you're like 1 year early
no, I was one year
now.
early. Oh
Oh
yeah, I was one
man,
year late and 1 year early
yeah.
because last year I said they're gonna come back, and then last year obviously they didn't. So clearly I just chose the wrong timeline.
Hey, that $500,000 fine was worth it.
Yeah, that's crazy, bro.
Definitely.
Oh,
I mean, we already really kind of harped on Phoenix. I think if there's anything for my New Year's resolution, I just want to see health from them.
yeah,
Because I mean, fully healthy, this is a good roster, no doubt. Like, yeah, you look at like the fact that's a whole bunch of like minimum contract guys, but you know, when you got Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, you don't really need a lot of much else. You need something, but you don't need nothing crazy. And Yusuf
yeah,
Nurkic is kind of getting back to that, top 10, borderline, even maybe pushing seven ish type of center. He's had a solid season. And, I think it's almost as much as we want to say we know what these teams are going to look like, they're the one that I look at where you really don't know what anything's gonna look like with them. They're the big wild card
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, they are a wild card.
Yeah,
I think they just lack the biggest thing I think they lack is a table setter. Like they just need some. I mean, we talked about T.J.
TJ
McConnell or
McConnell
something
would
like
be
that.
absolutely amazing on this team, man.
Yeah, I think they just need somebody there to set the table because I think Booker is so much better coming off action versus him starting it. Because to a degree, he will always be a score first player. So I think in terms of his floor game, I just don't think it's there versus a natural point guard or versus
Hmm.
somebody who's naturally in a position to pass first. Which I think you can see on this team because I feel like they play hot potato with the ball sometimes, and it's
Yeah,
like frustrating.
I feel like Booker is being rushed too within his offense, which is I think
Exactly.
exactly why you're saying he's better off the ball, because it's kind of like
Yeah.
if he's coming off the top of the key, that's maybe what you got 18 seconds, 16 seconds to work with. He goes into a shot pretty quickly a lot of the time, versus like when you have a Chris Paul, you're able to really get like the best shot possible. So
I mean, they were first in the West at one point with with Chris Paul and Booker, McCall, and they were also. I mean, we could talk about like the decision, and go back and you know hindsight, but again, I think they just need a table setter. Devin, I think Booker is much better coming off of action. I mean that's where he becomes an actual offensive option as
mhm.
opposed to starting it. And I think you limit Booker in that case as well because he's starting from an upwards position versus putting the defense in scramble mode when he's coming off pin downs. So strategically, I think they can figure out a better way to get him involved in terms of the offense. I mean, he's still doing his thing. It's Devin Booker, and it's not really concerning. But I mean, long term, you need somebody to set the table with those three guys. So
For sure,
figure it out, Phoenix man.
undoubtedly. Heading from one Phoenix, let's talk about a former Phoenix person and overall his team, and man, the Detroit Pistons. 26 games in a row, always lost. And I mean, when you look at it, I've seen the side by sides of them versus the Bobcats, them versus the Trust the Process, the Sixers, and man, it just makes no sense. Like when you look at it on paper, but when you really look into it, it's kind of hard to win games when you're fouling the most in games and you're 29th in turnovers. And man, it's just I don't. Let's start here. Let's start with Monty Williams because one thing I've noticed is that in his prior stops, there's always a bus driver that's specifically about to go into their prime. Slash, like the team has good vets. When you look at, Charlotte, this is Chris Paul, who was a 4-time All Star by then. Plus, you got a guy like David West, who's
David West, yeah.
David West is a dog. And when you look at Phoenix, you have Devin Booker, who was coming off of 26 a game. Granted, a lot of that's because nobody else could score the ball on that team, but, a budding superstar. And then you also have the addition of, Chris Paul. Versus now, it's like Cade is a guy that he has all the qualities of a bus driver, but, he hasn't really earned like the cap. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean you look at the vets on this team, it's Alec Burks, Joe Harris, and Bojan Bogdanovic. Those are the only guys with anything over 6 years of experience
Mm.
on this team. So, I mean, they clearly lack that. Um, I also think it's one of those situations where there's way too many hands in the pot. Like, so many young guys who need a time to shine.
Mm.
And, like, can we also talk about the fact that Jaden Ivey has been, like, in the doghouse?
Man, I feel like he's kind of been the scapegoat too. Like,
Like, how he's barely been able to play. That's the thing. Like, I think if they played him more, I think you would think of develop that backcourt. I mean, the fact Killian Hayes has resurged a little bit, but
that's
never.
I feel like a lot of that's just because he's getting actual PT and not necessarily because like he's developed into a surefire player. Because
Yeah.
like I feel like next free agency, someone's gonna give him like 40, 50 M's and he's gonna go back to being cheeks.
Who knows, man? He might. Well, again, I think it's the Malachi Flynn situation. I think that's the Malachi Flynn syndrome, where it's like a guy who gets bagged on. You give him a few minutes, then he looks like an NBA player.
Yeah, I remember top
You
of
know?
the year, Malachi looked like he could, like he might like reinvigorate himself.
Oh my god. But like that's what I look at in this team is you can have so many young prospects and you can build around those and give them time to develop, but at some point, like I think similar to what you said about the Warriors, like pull back on that pool a little bit and like invest in specific guys like
Hmm.
Jalen Duren, like when he's back, Cade Cunningham, clearly, Osar Thompson, like he needs a free clearway for him to be who he's gonna be, right? And you're talking about splitting those guys' times with, the Wisemans of the world, the Killian Hayeses of the world, Jaden Ivey and Isaiah Stewart, and then, to some degree Bagley, and then Bogdanovich. He has to play when he's back because, quite frankly, I'd say he's your most consistent player.
For sure.
When he's on the floor. Um, so I think, and obviously you're playing Burks. So it's just really thinking about pulling back, really focusing and investing on the core that you need, and turning some of these guys into some veteran players, some better players. I mean, we saw the rumors that they're looking for a forward. They're looking at OG, Tobias Harris, Pascal Siakam, potentially, and acquiring those guys because, yeah, you gotta, some of these prospects and draft capital has to go somewhere.
Yeah, you can only really draft prospects so much before you gotta like really, provide some results.
Yeah.
The big one there, I think is OG, because we've seen for so long that OG's yearning for a bigger role. And when you look at this team, I think he could slot perfectly into being, a Chris Middleton type guy. He could develop into, well, he's 26, right?
OG.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's 26 or 27.
Mm. I think there's still a little bit of time for him to like show his chops, but I think
Absolutely.
if you were to put him on this team, oh,
26. Sorry, 26. You're right.
26, yeah, that could be
Yeah.
some scary business for sure. Oh.
I think he aligns perfectly with their timeline because when he's in his prime, you're talking about Cade being, 24, 25,
Hmm.
and OG's about 30. So I think it aligns. I mean, if that happens, man, give me Jaden Ivey. Give me Jaden Ivey all day, every day.
That would
Give me Jaden Ivey.
that's a pretty fair trade if I do say so.
I will give it. I will when we discuss it in our wish list. I will give you the breakdown of what I saw that I think is actually a really good trade for both
Okay,
teams.
a little
So
teaser for later.
yes, sir.
Respect. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's just hard to suck this bad when there's like, because if you look at the Bobcats, that was a shitty team. I mean, that was a trash ass
Yo,
team.
clip that. Clip that, bro.
Man, when you look at the trust the process Sixers, that was a
Yeah,
shitty
oh, that was a
team.
terrible team. Who was the best player on that team that year? Jared Bayless?
Oh, bro, that
Was
might
he
have
on
been.
that team?
Oh, I think he was, but you know who might have been cooking on that team? Jalil Okafor, bro.
Oh
I feel like
yeah,
that
that
might
was
have been the
right.
year. Cause
Oh my
oh
god.
yeah, bro. Yeah, man.
Oh my god.
So this was
Spencer
Jalil
Hayes.
Okafor's season or rookie season. Guess how much he averaged?
His rookie year. Did he have
Yeah,
like 18 and 11 or something like that?
18-7.
Oh, okay, okay. Jesus. Jalil Okafor, one of the greatest.
Oh my goodness.
Who else do they have on that team, man? They had, oh yeah, they had Christian Wood. They had TLC.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. Luau Cabarro's got to be like that's a top 10 NBA name, man.
Yeah, 100%, yo. Oh
But
my
I mean, you
god.
compare that to when you have a guy like Cade Cunningham who's surefire, like he's gonna be a guy in the league, whether it's as a Robin or as a Batman, he's gonna be like a top tier level guy.
Yeah.
Asar Thompson. You don't have as many like double doubles, as many stocks. Be in contention at the beginning of the year for an all defensive team if you're not going to be a solid player in the league. You don't have a guy like Jalen Duren who was like putting up 20 and 10 like it was nothing.
Yeah.
getting the comparisons to, young Dwight Howard. Granted, those were a little out of left field because Dwight Howard he was a boy amongst men and he was being better than the men when he first came into the league. But there's just like there's a there's a surefire core here, and it's not really being developed properly. So I feel like it's like an anomaly. Like for all we know, I wouldn't be. You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna put it on here. Next year, I think they're gonna be decent, especially if they get like
Hmm.
an OG Ananobi. If they figure out their rotation, have a clear direction, and have more surefire veteran presence, they can have a jump similar to what, maybe slightly below what, no, fuck it. They're going to have a jump similar to what Orlando's doing this year. If they can like really hone in on
That's
that
a massive
rotation.
jump. That will probably be of all time the greatest turnaround from season to season of all time.
I
That
mean,
has to
when
be.
you look at it,
If they were to
I,
go
I
from
was
two and
gonna,
20 and like losing a record amount of games to
hey man, fuck it. I'll put my skin, I'll put my neck out for it.
all right, I like that hot take.
Keep keep
Clip
keep that,
that
keep
for
that
next season.
for next
All right,
season. The Detroit Pistons will be a top 6 team in
damn.
terms of being ass. No.
Hey, he had y'all bamboozled.
No, I'm kidding. I
Yeah,
think I
they will
think
be
though
not. They won't be 15.
you can't get
They'll
much
be
lower
12.
than this. That's
Yeah.
you can't get much lower than
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, it could be worse. It could be worse. That's the thing. It
true. You
can't
you,
be.
you could have lost those 2 other games. It'd just be 0-28.
Oh my god. This team would be absolutely cooked, man.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. All right, winding down to the last bit of the podcast. Let's talk about some of our favorite moments from 2023. Ruffle some of them off, Ruben. Let's hear it.
I think Jamal Murray winning one
Oh
was
yeah,
big. Just Canada. I think
that
that was big.
I think. Oh, he was one of. Yeah, no, never. What am I saying? He's like Wiggins last year, but Jamal Murray, I think, in addition to like the whole recovery story, now that we're gonna see him and Shea kick the US's ass this summer. Oh man, yeah, I like that one.
Speaking of that, Team Canada's bronze medal was definitely
Mm.
one of the big
Oh, I
moments.
didn't. I forgot about like international play. Yeah,
Yeah, I had to. I knew that like we were gonna discuss NBA stuff, but I just had to have that in there because I
hey
mean, for a
man.
country that was great to see. I mean,
In
LeBron's
in
scoring
Jordy
record. I
we
think
trust. In Jordy
in
we
Jordan we
trust.
trust. Raptors should have hired him too.
Mm,
Anyways, um, yeah, LeBron scoring record. I think that was cool to see.
for sure.
I mean, Kings being relevant again. I think
Ooh,
it's just awesome seeing Sacramento was a good team, and I love Fox, and I love Sabonis, and I love everything that they've built over there. I'm a big fan of Mike Brown. Um, Dame finally leaving Portland. I think that was like one of those things where it's like, oh god damn, bro, like finally, like the boy cried wolf kind of thing.
bro, that was
Yeah.
like. Do you know how when 2K24 came out, he hadn't been traded yet? But like,
Yeah,
there was
they had
still
the voice
they
note,
had all the commentary that like he was.
and that it was like actually on the Heat too. Like it was like, oh, when he
Yeah.
joined the Miami Heat, and then oh, that was also great too. The Miami Heat fans not getting Dame Lillard, I think that was pretty great too.
Mm,
Yeah, I think it was overall a solid year for basketball. Notice that I didn't have any Raptor fave moments. I think one of my fave Raptor moments last year was yeah, none. So that
you
team,
might have some to look forward to in 2024, man.
I hope so. I mean, I already have one. It's Scotty being real. I
See,
think Scotty got to be an All Star this year. At this point,
oh yeah,
I think he has to be. Oh
Scotty
my
too
god,
hottie, man. All right,
Scotty too hot. Baby.
for me,
Yours.
first one I got is the Dame 70 piece because
Yeah,
that was one where it's like it's within regulation, and it wasn't necessarily like he forced it because I think if I remember correctly, he didn't play like a lot of like the end of that game, maybe something along those lines.
yeah.
I could
They
be
were up
wrong.
by a lot.
Yeah, but that because in my opinion, the Donovan Mitchell one, little bit fraudulent when you consider that he left before the ball hit the rim. But
Yeah,
it's in there as 70, so I ain't gonna say anything after that. Another one for me, this is more personal, but seeing Dame live, because man, uh,
Yeah, that's cool.
the half court bombs are so much more impressive when you're seeing it like in person.
How far it is,
Yeah.
and actually how far like yeah.
Oh my goodness. And I look at that as maybe I'm a good luck charm. I saw Dame live. I saw him play against the Bucks. What happened next? I might have to go in and tune in next time the Lakers are in town. Who knows? But last one, or not last one. For me, next one, I think it's just the play invalidation is how I would word it.
Yeah,
Because I mean,
it worked.
you would have thought that at some point a team would have made the finals coming from the play in, but I don't think anybody ever expected to be this soon. And for it to be the Miami Heat is very on brand for sure.
On brand for sure.
That's not even a
Heat
shot.
culture, baby.
That's
No, yeah, heat culture,
Heat
man.
culture,
It's
man.
like, and Jimmy, I think it speaks a lot to Jimmy,
Mhm,
and Bam, like those guys.
mhm.
Jimmy just he gets it done, man. That dude is a freaking winner. He may not have one chip yet, but like, come on, you can't say that he's not a winner
Would you
because
say
of what
Jimmy's a
he's
Hall
been
of
able to
Famer?
do. Yes,
Hmm.
yes, 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 a million times yes,
Absolutely. Jimmy's a dog.
man. He's greatness personified without all of the accolades.
Before Jokic, he might have been like the biggest steal of all time,
Yeah,
draft
actually,
wise.
you think about it draft wise. Yeah.
Like you got Manu as well, but like I think in terms of like what they did personally, because Manu's great, but when you look at the personal accolades, he gets brought down a little bit. But when it comes to being, a top 10, top 5 player at time, man,
Well,
Jimmy's.
he's a bus driver, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
Manu was never a bus driver,
Oh yeah.
so to speak. So I think, yeah, I agree with you.
Hmm. And the last one for me, I'll say it as like new media, and I mean that in the space of
Yeah,
like seeing a lot of these, because you had all the smoke for these past few years, knuckleheads, but now we're getting, man, KG. If there's one player that I would pay money to see like their mic'd up situations, bro, I
it'd be
would
KG.
I would pay good money to hear
Yeah,
KG. And the way he talks like with P, it's like, yeah, it doesn't feel like it'd be very different from the way he talks on his podcast. And I think just overall a lot of like these former players are, lending their voice towards not only just giving us viewers and us listeners an insider perspective of what the league is like, but as well as like giving you little tidbits here and there. Gilbert Arenas, as much as like a lot of things he says feels outlandish, I could believe that.
questionable,
Yeah. I believe
outlandish,
I could believe
questionable.
it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, his stories are insane. I mean, like Jeff Teague's podcast. Oh
Oh,
my
bro,
god,
yes.
one of the funniest ever. One of the
Oh my
funniest
gosh.
ever.
Jeff T. Okay, real quick.
Sada.
Top 3 NBA storytellers based off the podcast.
Okay, Iman Shumpert,
Oh yeah, Shump's a good one.
Jeff Teague for sure.
Hmm.
This one's hard.
Yeah, because there's way too many good ones.
I'm before he passed, I'll say uh what do you call it? What do you call that again? Not extra nomination. What am I talking about? What is that? What is that phrase that you used to say like um special nomination? Not no, not that. God, I'm blanking right now. It's like
Oh,
you know what I'm trying to say though, right?
kinda.
It's like that. It's like not in the top three, but like here's a special consideration. Like what do you call that?
Honorable mention.
Honorable, jeez, honorable mention. Shout out Drake, ESPYS. Honorable mention. Kobe. Kobe was a great storyteller.
Mm.
Kobe was an awesome storyteller. But man, who would be the third? I mean, I have Shump and Jeff Teague right now, but who would be the third? KG. KG's right up there.
Oh yeah, of man. For me, yeah, I think it's KG, uh, Jeff Teague, and then my last one just to not match. Oh man, whenever I hear GP, he
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah,
hundred
like
percent.
any of like the big shit talkers are all
Yeah,
really good
GP was a great.
storytellers.
Who else? Reggie Miller was a good storyteller.
Hmm.
And some of the remember the old like open court? That's what the podcast they used to have with all the oldies.
Oh yeah,
That one was a good one. I mean, Shaq was a really good storyteller too when it came to his career and like other
Chuck
players
too.
he
Like,
played with.
and I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's all just giving like validity to like this whole favorite moment thing where we're really starting to go away from like the old white guys who went to journalism school for and have been doing it for 30 plus years, which there's still
yeah,
a space for them for sure. But I think when it comes down to it, especially with social media, we love being as close as possible, as much, in the world as we can be.
yeah,
And these like former player podcasts, former players being in media is, I think, the closest thing that a lot of us can ever get to that. So I think just, yeah, just the overall new media, being able to get an insider perspective has all been really dope for sure.
yeah. Agreed. New media is here.
Mm-hmm. Blacktop podcast coming in hot.
Yes, sir.
And already to end it off here, last bit of the podcast, our NBA New Year's resolution. Since you already teased yours, I'll go first. For me, for the Bucks specifically, I just want them to find balance because I think there's still a little mix of, like you said, Ruben, you don't know who the ball is going to go to, and you end up kind of selling for a bad shot. Aside from that, number one, Alex Caruso, man.
Yeah,
I need some
get him on the Bucks.
either Alex Caruso, PJ Tucker. If you could get both, I could die a happy man. But yeah, just getting some kind of point of attack defender, some guy that's able to really like allow Brook and Giannis to be more sound and not have to worry about be like getting beat off of the first move, like I mentioned earlier. And then the big thing as well, I think, is just health. That's something that we're always gonna wish for. 'Cause, I mean, not seeing Joel play on Christmas was a really big bummer, especially considering the tear he's been on recently. You know, just a lot of like the injuries. Bradley Beal. As much as like we clown the Suns, I really want to see what that big three really looks like when they're fully operational. Because I think it could be special for sure. All right, moving on to you, bro.
I like that. It's crazy that KD can't have a healthy big three, hey, no
Yeah.
matter where he goes. But okay, so I would my wish list is Raptors to trade Pascal actually over OG. I would rather
Mm.
keep OG. I think he matches Scotty's timeline in terms of fit. I think it's better. If you go to Detroit, you're looking at Jaden Ivey, Bogdanovich, and Monte Morris. I think that's a really good return with draft capital. If you go to Indiana, you're looking at Nemhard, Buddy Hield, and Jarris Walker and some draft capital for a guy like
Oh,
Pascal.
oh, that would be another. I just want to see Jarris Walker get some burn. Like when
Yeah.
you look at like how bad the Indiana Pacers have been since like the whole in-season tournament, Jarris Walker I think is a guy that could really unlock that squad. But my bad, my bad. Keep going.
No, I agree though. I agree because Jarris Walker is not getting any burn because there's so many other forwards and bigs on that team that they are playing over him. So I mean, give him some burn in Toronto. I think Jarris Walker would be a great fit there. And then a potential landing spot is Atlanta because you have AJ Griffin, you have DeAndre Hunter, and obviously Kobe Buffkin. I think would be a really nice return and some draft capital.
Mm.
We talked about Onyeka Okongwu, but I think that's reaching a little too much, especially for a guy like Pascal who's going to free agency. So it'll be interesting to see. I think he gets traded before December 30 because there's a caveat with his contract. So it'd be nice if there's something that happened before then. Otherwise, I hope something happens trade deadline, and not just for the Raptors. I hope that I want to see some blockbusters this year. I think the Bulls are going to blow up, and I think they ultimately trade one or two of their stars, Vooch, Levine, or DeRozan. I think another team is going to be looking to make some noise, like Oklahoma City, and they've got a lot of draft capital and a lot of young players. So I think we're going to see one or two blockbusters at by trade deadline. So between now and trade deadline, and yeah, I hope the Bulls implode and sell. So that aligns with it. And I'll give you a big one. I hope the Pistons beat the Raptors on Saturday if the Pistons don't already win,
Oh,
because I think Masai Ujiri, after a loss to the Pistons, I don't think he can no longer ignore the fact that this roster doesn't freaking work.
Fuck,
So
that's a good one. Yeah.
I hope the Pistons beat the Raptors genuinely, because I'm not going to watch any more garbage basketball we're literally wasting away Scotty's breakout season for some mid-average season. So,
You gotta tweet. We gotta tweet this clip.
oh dude, 100%. I hope the Pistons beat the Raptors when they match up, because Masai Ujiri cannot turn a blind eye to that loss anymore. Because I mean, they beat Washington today by 30 after they made a change in the starting lineup. I was gonna say change the starting lineup. They did it today and it worked, but it's also against the Wizards, so there's nothing to get excited about over Jordan Poole, who looks like, nah, I won't say
Hey,
it,
man,
but
he might be trash, but I ain't gonna lie. There's probably very few people in the world that would like keep their life if they could trade with him. Think about it, man.
yeah, 100%.
A ring before 25, $100+ million contract, and you get to shoot the ball as many times as you want.
Yeah, and you get to call other players on your team trash. Man, you going in the huddles and looking at Denny Avdia. Granted, Denny Avdia is pretty trash. But he
He's a
goes,
solid
man, like,
defender,
this is,
but yeah.
oh, brother, you should have
He's
seen one
not no
basket
bus
today.
driver.
Oh, brother, he's filling up the gas. That's what he's doing. So, no, I don't know about no Denny
Oh
Avdia.
man.
These brothers thought he was Luka Doncic.
Oh,
Oh, my
yeah.
God. Remember Denny Avdia? Oh,
Oh
my
my
God.
goodness.
Oh,
Hey,
that brother.
I think that's a perfect way to end off the year there. We will see
Yeah,
y'all in 2024. And we're excited, keep the podcast going. I enjoy talking
yes,
ball
sir.
with my boys. And yeah, hope y'all are stay healthy. Hope y'all are all have a prosperous 2024, a good end to the year.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think hopefully more in persons.
Mm-hmm.
The winter season, holiday season has made it really busy, but I think that's a resolution for us as a podcast, is to give you guys podcasts in person, some more live interactions.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll get those going again, and hopefully some big stuff. Maybe get some guests on here or something. So
Hey, hopefully,
yeah,
I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's do it.
yes sir,
All
yes
right.
sir.
With that, stay safe, stay blessed. We'll see y'all soon.
Bad shots, bad shots.